ABC News' continuing coverage of Reach into Space. Now from Washington, David Brinkley.
We would like to welcome those stations joining us at this point. The Space Shuttle Columbia is now approaching Edwards Air Force Base in California and will be landing shortly, and we are all set up to bring it to you live. Here's Frank Reynolds. Frank?
Thank you, David. And you saw just a moment ago there the first pictures of the Space Shuttle Columbia as it neared the California coast. Astronauts Ken Mattingly and Hank Hartsfield have executed a flawless return down through the Earth's atmosphere. Here is the picture of the shuttle from the NASA tracking camera, which is at Anderson Peak, California, just on the coastline of California. And doesn't that baby look nice? She's only about 9 or 10 minutes really away from touchdown. That's a long-range camera, and the space shuttle is still 100 miles or so away from the actual touchdown point. Touchdown in 8 minutes and 34 seconds. She's just crossed the coastline, actually just south of Santa Barbara, and will continue straight on, almost on a direct line to Edwards Air Force Base, where there is a large crowd waiting to greet the astronauts, including, of course, President Reagan, who will be out there today, arrived a short while ago. These are really the first shots we've had now of the Space Shuttle Columbia since she roared off the pad just about exactly 1 week ago and an hour from today, last Sunday at Cape Kennedy, and the now familiar spectacular launch. And the Columbia has now successfully gone around the Earth, completed its mission flawlessly, and we have lost the picture for just a moment, but we've already had reacquisition of signal. The space craft is in communication with the ground, and they've been given the clearance for landing here at Edwards Air Force Base on runway 22. So now we want to bring in our correspondents who are there at the Edwards Air Force Base. First of all, we'll get a quick glimpse of the president under an umbrella there, a sunshade. He and Mrs. Reagan are there on the special platform that's been erected for them to watch the return of the Columbia. And here's some of the crowd. We're told there are more than 300,000 people scattered all around this huge sprawling complex to try to get a glimpse of Columbia as she comes down. Let's bring in now Lynn Scher and Gene Cernan at Edwards Air Force Base. Lynn?
Frank, good morning. As you say, it is a perfect day. This is also probably the first return of Columbia with music. You can probably hear a little band music in the background. A lot of people here waving a lot of flags. It's going to be a little bit different from what we've seen before. And Gene Cernan, it's a lot different from White Sands.
Frank, it's a great day for a birthday party. Everyone here is in a jubilant spirit. As Lynn said, the flags are flying, the president's here, and we're all waiting for the return of Columbia to come home.
And that will happen before long. You're not very far away from hearing the old sonic boom, are you, as she goes over?
We ought to. We expect to hear that boom. I think we'll hear it probably in the next 2 or 3 minutes because the Columbia has crossed the coastline, and she'll be landing here in about 6 more minutes.
Everybody here, by the way, Frank, is going to be informed of all these things. They have imported Hugh Harris, who is the voice of launch control. He is out here telling all the visitors, the very important visitors, exactly what to expect. This is also something new for this return of Columbia. There's a huge banner, I don't know if you've seen it yet, over on one of the hangars saying, "Welcome home, Columbia," and certainly everybody here feels that way.
Well, it certainly is a grand occasion for NASA to have the president there, to have the touchdown come on the 4th of July. There's our graphic showing that we have 5 minutes and 40 seconds or so to go. There you can see it now once again. Again, this is from a camera, I believe, at Edwards. It's 44 miles away, I'm told, from touchdown. Seems to be just gliding through the sky. And, of course, Columbia is, at this point, really a glider. You know, they don't have an opportunity to make more than one pass at the landing strip. And on this particular landing, they will come down on runway 22, which is the concrete one-way. That will be the first time. It's some 15,000 feet long and about 300 feet wide. But it has plenty of desert on either side and at either end of it. So the runway landing here will not quite be the same as landing at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, which of course is what eventually will happen on future shuttle flights. Gee, that's
Frank,
a pretty sight.
Frank, we were told earlier at Houston by Harold Drawn, one of the flight directors, that there is a bit of a psychological barrier to the astronauts coming down on that concrete runway. But Gene Cernan, of course, astronaut pilot Gene Cernan, had some different feelings about whether concrete would be a psychological barrier.
Oh, Lynn, you know, they don't have the entire expanse of the desert to land in, and it's sort of, I looked at it as coming home to an aircraft carrier. You know exactly where it's going to be, and you better be on it, and I think that's the way Ken looks at it.
Even though they don't have that long runoff that they would have with these piles of sand out here.
Well, once they see their target and they've got the spacecraft under control, which you obviously do at this time, I think we're going to see a pretty smooth Navy landing again.
Gene, the angle of descent now, they're really coming down fast, aren't they?
Of course, the vehicle is a glider. The spacecraft is a glider. It doesn't have very large wings. As a result, it has to maintain a lot of speed to manage its energy, and we will see a very steep descent, as we have looked at in the past. We're still seeing it should be about overhead. It's 10 miles away, and it'll just be a matter of 10 or 15 seconds before we may very well pick up that sonic boom.
And you haven't yet been able to see it?
No, we haven't. There we go. How's that for timing, Frank? She just went over the top, obviously.
I think that's about as loud as we've ever had it here.
I'm getting good after a little practice.
Well, now we can see the
the
president and everybody else looking up there. I think he's got it in view.
Frank, I think we do have some contrails of it just to the southwest of us over here. There it is. Now you can see the contrail of the shuttle itself. We have a very good visual. It's just a tremendous day now, and I think that's a chase plane camera.
One chase plane camera up there with it, Frank, this time.
feet.
Used to be two, but the one is providing excellent coverage, as you can see.
Gene, is it in the big left turn now, swinging around?
It's in a big sweeping left-hand turn, and what it's doing is losing some of its altitude, maintaining a proper speed so it has, again, enough energy to make the runway. This is a very critical phase of the maneuver. It will be reaching out about 10 to 15 miles away before it turns back in.
Frank, this concrete runway, as you probably know, is a bit further off than runway 23, where it's landed the previous two times here at Edwards. So we are not going to get quite as wonderful a visual sighting as we had before.
The picture we're seeing here is of the president. I noticed, by the way, that as soon as that sonic boom hit and the spacecraft came into sight, everybody got up off the seats. They were sitting down before. Oh, you can see the contrails now, just behind the
18,000 feet now.
The spacecraft.
Frank,
the president is on a platform with several astronauts who have already flown in the shuttle. Let's see if we can't pick up more communications now between the spacecraft and the ground.
Thank you.
He's being well briefed out there by previous shuttle pilots.
Turning into a heading lined up with the runway now.
He should be in automatic control at this point in time, and will probably maintain it down through about 200 feet, 14,000 feet.
Airspeed 264.
I still can't get over that, Gene. The idea of being an automatic and bringing it down right to the deck before he takes over.
12,000 feet.
Look at the little chase plane alongside.
It's always a beautiful sight. Should be lined up with the runway, turning in on what we call final at this point in time, but she's still about 6-7 miles away.
9,600 feet. 282 knots.
It's
Into auto land guidance now.
This is what Commander Mattingly has referred to as that magic machine called the shuttle.
Look at the escort.
Now, Frank, you can see how steeply she comes.
Ken Mattingly will take over at 2,500 feet for the landing.
Okay, he's in automatic guidance. He'll be taking over manually here to land the aircraft with stick and rudders like normal airplanes are landed.
280 knots at 4,200 feet. 3,000.
2,200 feet. He should have it manually. He's still at well over 200 knots when he touches down. The fans are cheering. Americans are cheering out here. This is really a great birthday party.
They're getting a play-by-play on the loudspeakers, too.
And is the president going to get a view? There's the landing here. She came out.
Yeah.
There it is. She'll just gently come down. Keep it coming, Ken. Keep it coming. He's a little fast, it looks like. Stand by for touchdown.
There it is.
Touchdown. There's the dust. The nose will come down gently, and this time I expect it'll stay down.
Not like the last time when it suddenly reared up again, yeah.
Outstanding job.
Outstanding.
Yeah. He heard you, Gene. He heard you. That's Brewster Shaw, the Capcom, echoing that. Outstanding.
Well, let's see how much runway he uses now.
Shuttle control here. The unofficial landing time, 7 days, 1 hour, 9 minutes, 40 seconds.
We were
To
about
repeat, the unofficial landing time, 7 days, 1 hour, 9 minutes, 40 seconds.
well, we're about 14 seconds early, but we lifted off on time, Frank.
Lifted off 135 milliseconds early, Frank. Came down 13 seconds early.
Has he still got some runway left?
He's got a ways to go. There you see the president
Yes.
with, you see Bob Crippen, who was on STS1, just punched the air when that came down. He was real happy. He's got his own craft going up, STS7. He'll be commanding.
This is a pretty good way to impress the commander-in-chief. Ah, he's come to a stop.
Well, that was a hard service runway, I think, which is another milestone, Frank, in the development of the usefulness of the shuttle. That says we can come down on hard service runways, and there's a lot of them around the world to land in if we have to.
Actually, they were unable to make use of the opportunity that they wanted to bring it down on a crosswind landing.
Well, a crosswind landing is probably the one single thing left from this test phase, but as I understand, the shuttle's going to be landing here, both Columbia and then Challenger, for the next couple landings, and I think they'll get a shot at it.
This, of course, makes it operational, Frank. This is the end of the test flights for Columbia.
That's right.
Now goes into the end of the test flights and now off into the operational.
Here's a replay now, videotape of the Columbia as she comes in for her 4th return from space.
And it is like a monument out there, Frank, as you well know, because you've been right here next to it. You know, the landing gear came out a little bit earlier this time, but that, again, is just an energy management consideration. It depends on their airspeed and altitude.
Well, it was a flawless descent and certainly a flawless landing. You're right, Gene. The nose does stay down this time, didn't it? All right, as we look at the viewing stand there with the president and the various trucks going out now to secure the Columbia, who's come down, we'll pause for just a moment. Our coverage of Space Shuttle Columbia will continue in a moment. Let's have another quick look in the time remaining to us of Columbia as she came back just a few minutes ago at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Well, here you see the spacecraft is down on the ground and the trucks are already beginning to move in to secure her. But here is the spacecraft as she made the descent. You can see the chase plane right alongside, coming in a flawless landing, the mountains in the distance. She was still at some height here and still in that very, very steep drop, coming down to only 2,500 feet before the pilot, Ken Mattingly, took over. There's the flare out and bringing her on down. So, Columbia has landed. You're watching a videotape of the landing that took place just a moment ago. The president will go out to greet the astronauts as they step down from their space plane. That'll be in about half an hour. And we'll be back on the air to bring you that event. Later, we'll also broadcast the president's speech at the Edwards Air Force Base. We're going to resume our regular programming now. For most of the stations with us in the East and Midwest, that means we'll pick up with the remainder of the David Brinkley broadcast 1 minute from now. More space coverage later. For now, this is Frank Reynolds in Washington.
This special report came to you from ABC News. We now resume our regular program schedule after this from our local stations.
News This Morning with Steve Bell and Kathleen Sullivan.
Wake up to all the latest news, business reports, sports, and weather.
What you need to know to begin your day.
Just before Good Morning America, ABC News This Morning, uniquely qualified to bring you the world.